Look, hey, Caitlyn on the side still going crazy, man. Look at this. She was pissed. I know you pissed, Caitlyn. Just bring it in, though. Stay focused. Don't let them get in your head, man. But she was pissed. Look at this. She was pissed. And I think this was her third foul. Stephanie, you got to throw that challenge, man. Don't allow Caitlyn to get the third foul. And then look, she's still cussing him out, man. She is pissed. Look at this. She's like, man, give me the challenge. Look at her eyes.
There are moments in sports when frustration is no longer hidden behind a player's composure. There are moments when a superstar reaches a breaking point. And during this game, Caitlyn Clark appeared to reach exactly that moment. The scoreboard mattered. The playoff race mattered. The missed rotations mattered. But for Caitlyn Clark, something bigger was unfolding possession after possession. Every time Caitlyn Clark attacked the paint, every time Caitlyn Clark absorbed contact, every time Caitlyn Clark fought through physical defense, she seemed to be operating under a completely different standard than everyone else on the floor. What made the situation even more explosive was the timing. Caitlyn Clark wasn't struggling. Caitlyn Clark was evolving. The game showed a version of Caitlyn Clark that looked stronger, more physical, and more determined than ever before. Rather than settling for deep threes, Caitlyn Clark was attacking downhill, finishing through traffic and forcing defenders into impossible decisions. Yet as Caitlyn Clark continued creating offense, controversial whistles began stacking up. Non-calls, questionable fouls, possessions that dramatically altered momentum. And when one of those calls handed Caitlyn Clark her third foul, the reaction wasn't directed only at the officials. The reaction appeared directed toward the Indiana Fever bench. Because from Caitlyn Clark's perspective, the answer seemed obvious. Challenge it, fight it, protect your franchise player. Instead, the challenge never came. And as Caitlyn Clark stared toward the sideline with visible frustration, the game transformed from a battle against Atlanta into something much larger. A test of trust between Caitlyn Clark and the coaching decisions surrounding her.
Man, turn her legs into a pretzel. Then comes up with it. The whistle was called while she was shooting. I can't hold you. I wish I had the sound, but the whistle was blown right there. Whistle was blown right there, and the shot goes up. Bang. She wants this, man. That is an and one. If you're blowing that whistle while she's up, you got to give her that, fam. That was some BS, man. BS. And look, you can see Caitlyn had enough of it. Now, right after that BS,
the sequence that ignited everything began with what many believed should have been an and one opportunity. Caitlyn Clark created separation with elite shot creation. Caitlyn Clark broke down her defender. Caitlyn Clark elevated into a made basket after contact. The whistle sounded, the shot fell, yet the continuation never came. For Caitlyn Clark, that wasn't merely 2 points being affected. That was momentum being stolen. The frustration started building because Caitlyn Clark had already spent the entire night battling physical defenders. Atlanta's defensive game plan revolved around making Caitlyn Clark work for every inch of space. Ryan Howard constantly pressured Caitlyn Clark. Multiple defenders collapsed whenever Caitlyn Clark turned the corner. Despite that pressure, Caitlyn Clark kept delivering, but elite competitors operate differently. They don't forget previous possessions. Every controversial call becomes part of a larger pattern. Every missed whistle gets added to an internal ledger. Every non-challenge becomes impossible to ignore. As the game moved deeper into critical stretches, Caitlyn Clark wasn't just reading defenses anymore. Caitlyn Clark was reading the officiating. Caitlyn Clark was adjusting to how contact was being interpreted. That's mentally exhausting. Most fans focus on physical fatigue. Superstars experience decision fatigue. Caitlyn Clark had to calculate where help defenders were rotating. Caitlyn Clark had to identify shooting windows. Caitlyn Clark had to create advantages for teammates. Now add another variable. How much contact is actually going to be called? That uncertainty changes everything. And when players begin feeling that uncertainty, they naturally start looking toward the bench for support. The expectation becomes simple. If a bad call happens, somebody has to respond, somebody has to challenge, somebody has to stop momentum from spiraling. Instead, Caitlyn Clark watched critical moments pass without intervention, setting the stage for an emotional explosion later in the game.
Remember that Aaliyah Boston block that turned into a jump ball? Watch what happens here, man. Angel gets the ball. You're going to have the same moment. Look at this. Hand on the ball. Hand is on the ball. And they called a foul. Come on, man. How is that a foul, dog? Y'all literally said it was a jump ball. Now you're calling it a foul. Now here's another moment where Jordan Canada is just falling by herself. Look at this. Caitlyn gets there, body to body.
The biggest mistake is assuming Caitlin Clark's frustration was about a single whistle. It wasn't. This was about accumulation. Caitlin Clark saw similar contact produce different outcomes. Caitlin Clark watched physical plays go uncalled on one end while fouls appeared on the other. And then came the sequence that truly amplified the tension. A foul was assessed against Caitlin Clark despite minimal visible contact. Immediately, the implications became enormous, because this wasn't simply another personal foul. This was Caitlin Clark's third foul. For star players, foul trouble changes everything. It affects aggressiveness. It affects defensive intensity. It affects coaching decisions. It affects playing time. Most importantly, it affects how a superstar approaches the rest of the game. Historically, great players become furious when avoidable foul trouble limits their impact. Whether it was Michael Jordan challenging officials, Kobe Bryant demanding explanations, or Diana Taurasi battling through controversial whistles, elite competitors hate feeling powerless. Caitlin Clark looked like she felt powerless in that moment. And that's where the challenge issue becomes significant. Challenges are not merely about overturning calls. Challenges are statements. A coach uses a challenge to communicate trust. A coach uses a challenge to tell a player, "I believe you're right." A coach uses a challenge to defend momentum. When Caitlin Clark looked toward the sideline, many observers interpreted her body language as a player desperately wanting that support. The visible emotion wasn't only directed at the referees. The visible emotion seemed connected to the belief that the coaching staff had an opportunity to intervene and chose not to. Whether the challenge would have succeeded is almost secondary. The symbolic value mattered, because once Caitlin Clark's frustration became visible, everyone in the arena could feel it. Teammates noticed it, opponents noticed it, fans noticed it. And suddenly the emotional temperature of the entire game changed.
Play, and that's Stephanie White's fault. Stephanie, you gotta run the play. Tell them, hey, KK, I need you in the paint, or call a timeout, something, man. If you're not seeing that they're reading the floor right, or the setup isn't right, come on, dog. You got to call something. I don't understand why Sophie was posting up. Now, you saw how discombobulated that play was, right? You're gonna turn around and run another play just like that. It's just as crazy, man. So look, Kelsey Mitchell getting the screen to run over here and crowd.
The reason this moment matters goes beyond one regular season game. Everything involving Caitlin Clark carries franchise implications. The Indiana Fever have built their future around Caitlin Clark. The offense runs through Caitlin Clark. The ticket sales revolve around Caitlin Clark. National attention follows Caitlin Clark. Every strategic decision is ultimately measured by one question: does it maximize Caitlin Clark? That is why the coaching decisions late in this game became so heavily scrutinized. Questions emerged about offensive spacing. Questions emerged about lineup choices. Questions emerged about fourth-quarter execution. And layered on top of all of that were the unanswered questions about officiating and challenges. When a superstar becomes visibly frustrated, organizations pay attention, not because frustration is unusual, but because frustration often reveals underlying concerns. Caitlin Clark is one of the most competitive players in basketball. Her anger usually comes from wanting solutions, not excuses. That is what makes this situation fascinating. Caitlin Clark wasn't asking for sympathy. Caitlin Clark appeared to be demanding action. Challenge the call, protect the possession, protect the momentum, protect the star player from carrying unnecessary foul trouble. Going forward, these moments could influence how Stephanie White approaches challenges in close games. Future officials will be watched more closely. Future controversial whistles involving Caitlin Clark will receive even greater scrutiny. And future interactions between Caitlin Clark and the coaching staff will be analyzed through the lens of this game. Because once a player openly shows that level of frustration, people start asking whether the support system around that player is responding quickly enough.